Hi, I'm Carmen Geddes, and welcome to 10 Sisters TV. We're continuing on with our jacket series, and it's so fun to get to this stage. You know, a great thing about doing this class is I'm going to finish at least one and maybe two jackets during this process, so this is really fun for me. And so we have created the fabric for our pattern pieces on our EasyPiecing Grid. I have cut out the pattern pieces. This is a jacket front that I have cut out. And what I want to show you today is we're going to talk about getting these pieces ready for quilting. Now, this jacket I'm going to quilt on the sewing machine. And so part of this is to help you to feel like you can make this whole thing on your own if you want to. If you've got a sewing machine that will sew a straight stitch, then you can make this whole project, including the quilting, on your sewing machine. Now, I have cut out each pattern piece. I have cut out my lining or back piece just a little bit. We're going to be kind of spreading out here. Oops, I think I needed that other piece. Hang on. Wait. So we've cut out what I wanted to show you here by just kind of spreading out. And you can kind of, if you can't see all of it, that's all right. But what I basically want to show is that my lining or back piece is cut out about 1 inch bigger all the way around. Just to give you plenty of room for that quilting part. And so we'll have a little tip video kind of talking about the pressing, but we want to make sure on your piece that we've got our fabric with the wrong side up, right? So this is think of this as making a quilt sandwich. You've got your backing, and then you'll have your batting, and then you'll have your quilt top. This is exactly the same process, but we're breaking it down to individual pattern pieces. Now, one thing I do want to make note of, if you want to create your fabric for your pattern pieces and even cut out the pattern pieces, but you have a long arm quilting machine, or you're going to take it to your quilter to do the quilting. There's two ways you can go about it. You can do it just like a quilt, and you'll just create a big piece of fabric or a quilt top that is going to be big enough for all your pattern pieces. And then you'll have your backing and then your batting. You're going to take that to your quilter, have them quilt up the whole thing, and then you're going to cut out all of your pieces. The other option, which is what I do, if I am going to quilt my pattern pieces on my quilting machine, I have a long arm, I will load the back on the quilting machine and I load the batting on the quilting machine. I will still take my individual pattern pieces and I will lay them on there. I will try to baste them in place, either with a little basting stitch from the quilt machine, or pins, or an adhesive spray. We're going to talk about that. That basically it really comes down to how much time do I want to spend? How much fabric do I want to use? Personally, I like creating my individual pattern pieces, but if that just seems too worky and too finicky, then just create a whole quilt top, have your quilter quilt it, you quilt it, and then cut them out. I'm going to go piece by piece. So we've got our backing or our lining. We have got the wrong side up. You want to give this a good press, and then I want to talk just for a second about what our lining or batting is going to be. This is just a thin, this I believe is an 80-20 batting. That's a nice thin batting. This is great to use. So when you're choosing your lining or your batting for your jackets, you're going to ask yourself, okay, what's this jacket going to be for? Is this going to be a fun summer jacket, a winter jacket, just quilt show jacket where it's going to be air conditioning? And also kind of how it feels and how stiff it feels. What I've used on a lot of mine is a polyester batting that is very thin and it's fusible. And so this is a fusible batting. I actually have had this for years. I kind of tried to find it again. I'm sure if I search more, I can still find it. But it's just a very soft, really lightweight, fusible batting. Now, another option, which I think would be very economical, which I've also done, is flannel. So just plain solid color flannel, depending on your fabric, depending on your jacket that you're making. You can go white, you could go, whatever. Just white would be good if anything is see-through, but just a solid plain flannel. Now, the one thing I would do when I'm using flannel as my liner, I would pre-wash the flannel. Now, the raw edges, not the selvages, but the cut raw edges, if you are washing a big piece of flannel, will definitely fray. So you could even do just a quick little hem on that. If you have a serger, you could serge it. One thing I've tried is just clipping a little corner off, and I just clip the corner off of each of the pieces, and sometimes that helps minimize fraying. But you want to pre-wash and dry that flannel. It'll get any sizing out of it and really make it a lot easier to use. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to lay that backing down, and we're going to lay our batting and then our quilt top and get it ready. I'm going to insert a little video kind of demonstrating that, so I'm not going to show that too much here, but I just sort of wanted to mostly let you know to cut that out a little bit bigger than your pattern piece. Hi, I want to show you a little tip for making our quilt sandwich, which basically is our backing, our batting, and our quilt top. But because we're working on a jacket, I want to show you that the backing is, of course, the lining. So I've got my lining fabric with the wrong side up, giving it a little press, and we're working on our biggest pattern piece, which is the jacket back. And what I want you to see is that I've used the fusible, real lightweight fusible batting. So I've already fused it to my quilt back. And the other thing I want to show you is that we have cut the backing a little bit bigger than the piece. But it's really just about an inch bigger all the way around the whole piece. And they're all nice and smooth, but we need to baste these layers together. So because the batting has been fused to my pattern piece, well, that's not going to go anywhere, but this backing can shift. So a couple of options: you can use straight pins, you can use safety pins. If you are pin basting this together, you want to start from the center and move out and then go that way, just so you don't end up with ripples. You always want to start from the center and move out. I'm going to use a spray based temporary spray adhesive. This is a good one that is temporary. It's non-flammable. Give it a good shake. You want to be just a little bit far back. We're just going to give this a little bit of a light spray, because we could always reapply if we need to. Sometimes I like to give it, a few seconds to get a little bit tacky, and then we're going to make sure that's nice and smooth out. But see, that's sticking pretty well. And so then we're going to come from the other side, pull this over. If you don't get any parts, well, of course, then you can just lift that up, give it another little spray. It is a little smelly, so have a window open. Don't do it next to your pets or little children. So as we lay this down, so again, I guess I'm basting this from the center to the outside too. Now, if I want a little bit of extra security, I can still put in a few pins, but this is going to keep these 3 layers nice and secure. And now we're going to head over to the sewing machine for quilting. So to get on with the quilting part, now again, so I've kind of talked about your options. Oh, one other thing I did want to show you is that this was some really yummy Liberty of London fabric that I've kind of hoarded for years. And it was just like, where can I've cut up little pieces and quilts here and there. But I thought, you know, one of the things that's sort of fun about your jacket is the inside of the front and then the back, you know, the inside back. That's kind of a little showcase place where it's like, you know, shows off some beautiful fabrics. So I chose this print for my front pieces and my back piece, but my sleeves never are going to show, right? The inside of my sleeve. So I chose something that I felt like it coordinated. Here's my 2 sleeve patterns that are all cut out. And so I just chose a complementary fabric. It's up to you, but you know, I basically just didn't want to use this up on a place that wasn't going to get seen. Okay, so this is my biggest quilt piece for the jacket. This has is my quilt back, and so you can see my quilt sandwich. I've got the back and my fusible batting. I have fused to the pattern piece using steam. And rather than, you could fuse it to your backing or lining fabric, or you can fuse it to the pattern piece. That's where I choose to fuse it really well. Then I used a temporary spray adhesive to baste this quilt pattern that has the batting fused to it to the backing piece. Because when I'm going to get ready to quilt it, I want all of this nice and fused together. So let's just talk a little bit about thread choices. Now, lots of different ways to quilt. The way I'm going to quilt this is very simple. I'm going to use my lines of my piecing and quilt a nice full 1/4 inch. And I'm just going to do straight vertical lines. And I think I'm going to make them a little bit random. I don't think I'm going to do every one, but I might start out random and then decide, you know, that I'm going to keep going. But if we want to talk a little bit about thread for the quilting part, you can, there's a full spectrum of threads. You can go with a very, you know, a very thick cotton thread that's going to really show. One suggestion for threads would be a variegated thread. A variegated thread is just what it says. The colors vary through the strand of thread. This is kind of, variegated thread is a great thread to use if you're practicing free motion, where you're going to want to do some, you know, movement in there, because it really hides mistakes really well. What I like to do a lot of my machine quilting is, because this, to me, because it is so scrappy, the background are all these low volume fabrics. I am thinking, I don't want to compete. I don't want my threads to be competing with my piecing. I kind of want this to be about the piecing and the fabrics. And so I could use either a lighter weight piecing thread, or what I tend to go to most of the time are rayon or polyester embroidery threads. I even use them to quilt sometimes, because there is just a little bit of that sheen to it, and they are a little finer thread. And so as I lay these on here, you are not really going to see color. Just barely a little color. So I guess what I would say when I'm choosing personally, I choose more what I would say like an icy tone. It's in the sewing machine. You'll see it in a second, but I'm going to use kind of a baby pink. But you'll see this is sort of a baby blue, and I very seldom will quilt white on white. I like to quilt a very light silver, not metallic, but I kind of hesitate to say gray, but more of a silvery gray, because it gives you the appearance of a white thread, but you can just barely see it. Anyway, just my opinion. If you, the darker threads that you go, the more you're going to see the quilting. So that can be good news, bad news. It's just totally perfect or personal preference. And so I'm going to get the sewing machine set up, and we're going to start quilting this thing.